February 1959. In the desolate, frozen heart of Russia's Ural Mountains, 9 experienced hikers embarked on a challenging expedition. Their leader, a determined 23-year-old named Igor Dyatlov, was leading a group of his peers from the Ural Polytechnical Institute. They were all young, incredibly fit, and seasoned in the art of winter trekking. They were supposed to return and send a telegram by February 12th. That telegram never came. None of them would ever be seen alive again. Their journey was meant to be a test of endurance and skill, a rite of passage for earning the highest certification for hiking in the Soviet Union. Looking at the black and white photos they took before their trip, you see nothing but smiles and confidence. They were a tight-knit group, full of life and excitement for the adventure ahead. They had meticulously planned their route, packed the right gear, and were more than prepared for the harsh conditions. But no amount of preparation could have readied them for what was waiting on the slopes of a mountain ominously named Koletsyakhl, which translates from the local Mansi language to Dead Mountain. What transpired on that mountain has since become one of the most chilling and enduring mysteries of the 20th century, a puzzle that has haunted investigators, scientists, and armchair detectives for over 6 decades. When they failed to make contact, alarm bells started to ring. A search party was assembled and dispatched into the vast, unforgiving wilderness. It took weeks for the searchers to locate the group's final campsite. What they discovered on that snowy slope was not a scene of a simple accident, but the beginning of a profoundly disturbing enigma. Their tent, the only shelter against the brutal elements, was found heavily damaged. But the strangest part, it had been slashed open from the inside. It was a clear sign of a desperate, panicked escape. Inside the tent, almost all of their belongings were left behind. Warm clothes, sturdy boots, essential supplies, and even their food remained untouched. This was baffling. Why would seasoned hikers abandon their only means of survival in such a hurry? Outside, a trail of footprints led away from the camp, down the slope towards a nearby forest. The footprints were a chaotic mix, some belonging to people wearing only socks, others completely barefoot. In temperatures plunging to -30 degrees Celsius, fleeing without proper footwear or clothing was a death sentence. Something had terrified them so profoundly that they chose a frozen certain demise over whatever was happening at their tent. The first 2 bodies were found about a mile away, near the remnants of a small fire under a large cedar tree. They were barefoot and dressed only in their underwear. The branches of the tree above them were broken, suggesting someone had tried to climb it, perhaps to get a better view or to escape from something on the ground. 3 more bodies, including that of Igor Dyatlov, were discovered between the tree and the abandoned tent. Their positions suggested they were desperately trying to make it back to the shelter they had so frantically fled. The official cause of death for these first 5 was hypothermia. It was a tragic but seemingly explainable outcome given the circumstances. The real mystery, however, was just beginning to unfold. It took another 2 months for the snow to melt enough for the searchers to find the remaining 4 hikers. They were discovered in a ravine, buried under more than 10 feet of snow, about 75 meters deeper into the woods from the cedar tree. And the nature of their injuries turned the entire case on its head. These were not victims of the cold. One hiker, Lyudmila Dubinina, had major chest fractures, an injury pattern consistent with the force of a severe car crash. Another, Semyon Zolotaryov, had similar catastrophic chest injuries. Nikolai Thibobrinolis had suffered a fatal skull fracture. Yet, strangely, there were no corresponding external wounds on their bodies. It was as if they had been crushed by an immense, invisible force. And then there was the most grotesque and inexplicable detail of all. Lyudmila Dubinina was missing her tongue, her eyes, and parts of her lips. The initial report was silent on how this could have happened. Some later suggested natural decomposition in a wet environment, but the specific and clean nature of the missing tissue has fueled endless speculation. There were no signs of a struggle with another person at the scene, no other footprints except those of the hikers themselves. Just this bizarre, horrifying tableau of death. The official Soviet investigation concluded in May 1959, with a verdict as cryptic as the case itself. The file was closed, stating that the hikers had died as a result of a compelling natural force, The area was sealed off to the public for 3 years. But what kind of natural force could cause such specific, brutal internal injuries while leaving no external marks, and terrify 9 experienced mountaineers into a suicidal flight? This vague conclusion only served to deepen the mystery, opening the floodgates for a torrent of theories that range from the plausible to the paranormal. The most conventional scientific explanation is an avalanche. A slab avalanche, perhaps, could have struck the tent, causing the internal injuries seen on the last 4 victims and forcing the group to cut their way out in a panic. However, critics of this theory point out several inconsistencies. The campsite wasn't on a particularly steep slope, and the search party found no evidence of a recent avalanche. The hikers' own tracks were still visible, which would have been buried by a significant snowslide. Furthermore, why would they run downhill, directly into the potential path of an avalanche, instead of moving perpendicular to it, as their training would have dictated? Another prominent theory involves secret military testing. The Ural Mountains were a hotbed of Soviet military activity during the Cold War. Could the hikers have accidentally stumbled upon a test of a new, powerful weapon? This could explain the concussive injuries and the authorities' secretive handling of the case. Some locals and another group of hikers reported seeing strange, glowing orange spheres or lights in the sky on the night of the incident. This has led to speculation about everything from parachute mines, which detonate in the air and produce a powerful concussive blast, to more exotic classified weaponry. Adding fuel to this fire, subsequent tests on the hikers' clothing revealed traces of radioactive contamination. While some argue the levels were minor, others see it as definitive proof of exposure to something nuclear or radiological. Of course, no enduring mystery is complete without theories that venture into the realm of the truly strange. The glowing lights in the sky have inevitably led to suggestions of extraterrestrial involvement. Did the hikers witness a UFO, and was their demise a result of a close encounter? This theory, while popular, lacks any concrete evidence beyond the anecdotal sightings. Another, more fringe idea, is an attack by a cryptid creature like the Russian Yeti. Again, this is pure speculation, born from the sheer strangeness of the scene and the lack of a human perpetrator. One of the most haunting pieces of evidence comes from the hikers themselves. Their cameras were recovered, the film inside miraculously preserved. Most of the photos are what you'd expect: cheerful group shots, scenic mountain vistas, and documentation of their journey. But the very last photo is an enigma. It's a blurry, abstract image taken in the dark, showing what appears to be a bright, glowing object against the night sky. Was this the compelling natural force? Was this what they saw right before they ripped their way out of the tent and ran for their lives? We will likely never know what they saw through that lens. So, where does that leave us? For decades, the case remained classified. But in 2019, Russian authorities reopened the investigation, hoping to finally bring clarity with modern forensic technology. Their conclusion? An avalanche was the most likely culprit, despite the lingering questions. They theorized that a slab of snow fell on the tent, causing initial panic. After fleeing, the hikers became disoriented in the dark and the storm, unable to find their way back, and ultimately succumbed to the elements and their injuries. This official explanation, however, has failed to satisfy many who have dedicated years to studying the case. It feels too simple, too neat for a puzzle with so many jagged, inexplicable pieces. The crushing internal injuries with no external signs, the missing tongue, the radioactive traces, the strange lights in the sky, and the final, cryptic photograph, these are details that an avalanche simply cannot fully explain. The site of the tragedy is now officially known as Dyatlov Pass, in memory of the young leader who led his friends into a mystery from which they never returned. It remains a place of pilgrimage for adventurers and a focal point for investigators drawn to its dark allure. The story of the 9 hikers is a chilling reminder that even in our modern world, there are some places where the line between the known and the unknown blurs, and some questions that may never have an answer. Something on that frozen mountain terrified 9 experienced mountaineers enough to make them run, barefoot and barely clothed, into a deadly blizzard. Some accidents can be explained, some mysteries can be solved. This one steadfastly refuses to be. Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive into one of history's just most unsettling unsolved cases. If you find these kinds of mysteries as fascinating as I do, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more content. And don't forget to ring the notification bell so you won't miss our next exploration into the unknown. We'll see you in the next video.